first begin this discussion of the Renaissance period, I want to attempt to answer the question as to what exactly was the Renaissance period, or what defined the Renaissance movement. Now, first, it's important to note that the term Renaissance is synonymous with rebirth, so Renaissance also meaning rebirth. Now, the Renaissance was the cultural shift throughout Europe from around the 15th century to the 17th century, with the first signs of the movement taking place in Italy, which is why Italy is oftentimes referred to as the birthplace of the Renaissance. Places such as Florence were responsible for creating the necessary environment to which would give way to the Renaissance. The Renaissance individual would have valued things such as intellectual talent, and as a result of this, Renaissance architects were oftentimes not only skilled architects, but also skilled philosophers or skilled mathematicians, skilled writers, skilled scientists, skilled artists, all of the above, really. Essentially, the more intellectually diverse one was during the Renaissance, the better. When we think about the term Renaissance, like I said, meaning rebirth, it's understood that there was clearly some sense of disapproval towards the Middle Ages, or the Dark Ages, that is, the time period taking place prior to the Renaissance. And people began to desire a stronger sense of individualism and felt that the Middle Ages had kind of abandoned this sense of individualism. So the Renaissance sought to reestablish individualism and strengthen it within society, and they would do so by introducing concepts such as humanism, which was a concept derived from antiquity. Humanism can be best defined as a movement that focused on Roman and Greek systems of thought, such as placing high importance on intellectual achievement as well as individual improvement, and humanism promoted the practice of concepts such as critical thinking. Humanism can be seen all throughout Renaissance architecture, really, but the one place I want to focus would be the Tempietto. Now, the Tempietto was a tomb likely built in Rome, and it was made to honor the crucifixion of St. Peter. The structure was made in 1502 by a man named Donato Bernante, and it utilizes a Roman-inspired dome to essentially enclose the structure, but the most noticeable aspect surrounding the Tempietto were the columns. They show a great resemblance towards the Roman Pantheon or the Greek Parthenon, for example, which is where it becomes very clear that the Renaissance had a very strong influence from antiquity. The Renaissance period also valued rationality in essentially everything, so this made design elements such as symmetry, balance, order very essential to the practice of architecture during the Renaissance period. Another interesting concept that I noticed was prevalent during the Renaissance period was the idea of attempting to achieve perfection in design. This is something that most time periods is discouraged, but the Renaissance urged. This can be seen by the likes of figures such as Michelangelo, who, when designing the sculpture of David, was clearly attempting to obtain perfection and portray perfection within reality. This was a concept adopted from Roman and Greek life that the Renaissance would then reestablished within society. And another important consideration is that the scientific revolution, beginning around the middle of the 16th century, was also going on at the peak of the Renaissance era. The scientific revolution would have made things such as geometry and other mathematical concepts crucial for architectural design. Another important consideration was the reintroduction of linear perspective into the design process, with both artistic design as well as architectural design. Linear perspective allowed the concept of perspective to no longer become an inconvenience to the artist or the designer, but allowed it to now become something that the artist or designer could use to their advantage. And with the introduction of linear perspective, we also saw much more efficient uses of perspective within artwork and structural designs. Linear perspective essentially just established a horizon as well as a vanishing point. You can understand linear perspective if you imagine yourself standing in the middle of a roadway and looking out onto the roadway, where you will see the roadway vanishing into the horizon, and that is essentially what linear perspective allowed artists and designers to implement into their works. The Renaissance period will always be a significant period of cultural revitalization, and it's responsible for bringing about the reemergence for a true appreciation and understanding for the aesthetic value of artistic design and architecture as well. And it was able to do all this while also maintaining the necessary functionality and practicality aspects. And we can all learn crucial information from the Renaissance movement, such as to enjoy the process of learning and to decentralize our talents and skill set beyond more than just one area of study. And my personal favorite principle that the Renaissance period promoted was the idea of striving towards perfection. While we're of course never going to obtain perfection, the idea of striving and attempting to obtain it is only going to yield better end results, and that's why profound figures such as Michelangelo himself were established during this time period. The idea of striving for perfection but not expecting perfection is something that could greatly benefit any and all societies, which is why I think the Renaissance period is one of a kind and also one of the most prolific time periods in our history.